The sun had begun to warm the air by the time Sarah had been waiting for her son-in-law, Jake, since early morning. The sweet scent of phlox, which she had planted along the path, filled the yard, creating a vibrant atmosphere at her little retreat in the countryside. This place was her sanctuary, a world where everything followed the slow rhythm of nature. Yet, sometimes, the silence grew too loud, and Jake's visits felt like a breath of fresh air. Her daughter, Emily, was caught up in her work in the city, but Jake always found time to drop by and lend a hand, not out of obligation, but because he was just that kind of person. As she heard the rumble of his truck approaching through the gates, Sarah stepped onto the porch, adjusting her apron. "Hello, Sarah." His voice, with its pleasant rasp, carried through the yard. He never called her mom, and there was something about that respectful distance that she appreciated. They were not just family by chance, they were two adults who had found themselves intertwined by fate. Jake emerged from the truck, pulling out a bag of groceries, despite her insistence that he bring nothing more than a small package. As he walked past her into the house, he paused for a moment, and she caught a whiff of his scent, a blend of city air, expensive cologne, and something indefinably masculine. It stirred up long-forgotten memories, bringing a fleeting smile to her lips. Once inside, Jake headed straight for the old dresser where she kept her medications. She noticed him place a small white box of pills into the top drawer. She didn't ask what it was. If he wanted to share, he would. Men often preferred to keep their matters private, even when the intentions were good. "So, what's the plan? Lunch first, or straight to work?" she asked cheerfully when he returned to the kitchen. "First, I need to refuel." "Can't fight on an empty stomach," he replied with a grin. Their lunch was simple, fitting for a day at the cottage: cold borscht made with kvass, young potatoes sprinkled with dill, and lightly salted cucumbers she had prepared just the day before. Jake ate with genuine appetite, the kind that only a man could muster after a long drive. Sarah sat across from him, quietly enjoying the sight of him as he confidently wielded his fork, chewing thoughtfully with a slight furrow in his brow. In those moments, he seemed less like a son-in-law and more like a strong, reliable man, someone she could lean on. "How's Emily doing? Is she driving you crazy with her projects?" she asked, serving him more potatoes. He looked up, his gaze direct and open. "Oh, you know how it is, Sarah. It's just her job. I knew what I was getting into when I married her. She's a woman with a strong will." "Strong-willed is putting it mildly," she chuckled. "Just make sure that will is something you can handle. You look a bit worn out. Is she not feeding you?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, she feeds me, but life in the city is hectic. That's why it's good to be here. Life moves slower out here. I'll fatten you up in no time." She gave him a mock stern look. "You better. It's important to know how to restore your strength." His response carried a hint of something deeper, a suggestion that perhaps she was imagining. After lunch, he changed into an old pair of jeans and a faded t-shirt, ready to tackle the task she had in mind for him. As Jake stepped out into the garden, Sarah settled onto the porch with a steaming cup of tea and a book, though the words blurred together as her gaze kept drifting toward him. He had chosen to tackle the most overgrown patch, where weeds towered high, nearly to his waist. He worked slowly but with purpose, his broad back glistening with sweat beneath his damp t-shirt, moving in a steady rhythm. Each motion revealed the strength of his muscles, and Sarah, a woman of years, found herself captivated by this raw masculinity. There was nothing shameful about it, it was beautiful, like the majesty of a thunderstorm or a river in flood. The sun beat down relentlessly. His shirt became soaked, clinging to his body and outlining every contour. After a while, he peeled it off, tossing it aside, leaving him in just his jeans. It was a simple scene, just a man and the earth. Time slipped by, and after what felt like 2 hours, Sarah had finished her tea and even dozed off in her chair. When Jake finally walked back into the cool silence of the house, Sarah was ready with a glass of cold homemade kvass. "You're a hero, Jake. You finished all that work?" "I'd have struggled with that patch for a week," she said, admiration lacing her voice. He took the glass, their fingers brushing for a brief moment. His hand was warm and damp. He gulped down half of it in one go, a drop lingering on his chin. He swiped it away with his tongue, and for some reason, Sarah couldn't look away. "Thanks, Sarah. This kvass is just what I needed." "Better than any beer," he said, setting the glass down and stretching, easing the tension in his shoulders. "My joints are aching," he admitted, more to himself than to her. "I'm not used to this kind of physical labor anymore." "I told you not to overdo it," she replied with mock seriousness. "This isn't just moving papers around in an office. It takes skill and rest. Let me rub your back. I have a herbal tincture, an old family recipe. It'll ease any ache." The word slipped out before she could second-guess herself. But it was just concern, wasn't it? What was wrong with that? After all, she was his mother-in-law. He looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Was it surprise or something deeper? "Thanks, but really, I'll just take a pill. I'll lie down for a bit, and it'll pass," he said, trying to soften the refusal. "Those pills are just chemicals," she shook her head. "They dull the pain, sure, but the warmth of a hand is different. It reaches deep inside." "Well, it's up to you," he said, turning his gaze to the window, signaling that the conversation was over and she wasn't pressing him. But from the corner of her eye, she noticed him pause for a moment before heading toward the old dresser. He opened the top drawer, and she heard the soft rustle of boxes and bottles. He was searching for his pills to ease the discomfort that came from working in her garden. Standing there, she thought about how some pains couldn't be eased with any medication, and some remedies weren't found in pharmacies. He lingered for a moment, as if listening to himself, before decisively moving toward the old dresser in the living room. She heard the drawer creak open, followed by the quiet shuffling of items. He was looking for his box. Admittedly, she had rummaged through it that morning herself, searching for a band-aid after cutting her finger, and in her haste, had mixed everything up, jars, bottles, and blister packs all jumbled together. Everything had become a chaotic mess. The thought of tidying up crossed her mind, but she quickly brushed it aside. There would be time for that later. Mark stepped out of the room, a glass of water in one hand and a small white pill in the other. He swallowed it without a grimace and downed the water in one go. "See? Chemistry is everything," he quipped, and she couldn't help but throw a playful jab back at him. "I could give you a back rub instead, much more beneficial and pleasant." He waved her off, though there was a distracted look in his eyes. "I'm heading for a shower, Elena. I need to wash off this fatigue." "Of course, go ahead," she replied, watching him disappear down the hallway. The water was hot, and there was a clean towel hanging on the rack in the bathroom. The door clicked shut, and soon she could hear the sound of water cascading down. She remained in the kitchen, washing the dishes from lunch, but the noises from the bathroom were oddly unsettling. The splashes of water, the dull thud when he likely bumped into something, it all felt so alive, so masculine. The sound of the water eventually quieted. It was another 10 minutes before he emerged, just as she finished drying the last plate and was wiping down the table. Mark appeared in the kitchen doorway, now dressed in a fresh t-shirt and shorts. His hair was damp, slicked back, but something about him seemed off. His cheeks were flushed with an unnatural redness, and his eyes shone with a feverish gleam. He shifted from foot to foot, unable to find a comfortable position. "Mark, are you okay? You're not feeling sick, are you?" she asked, concern lacing her voice as she scrutinized his face. "No, I'm fine," he replied, though his voice was low and strained. "Just feels hot in here." It was sweltering outside, and he had been working hard in the garden. Plus, the hot shower probably didn't help. "Sit down, I'll get you some cold mint tea. It'll help you cool off." "No, I'm fine, really," he insisted, running a hand along his neck. She noticed a vein bulging there, and he took a deep breath as if he were struggling for air. He paced a few steps around the room, then abruptly turned and headed back toward the dresser. His movements were erratic, anxious. She followed him, her worry deepening. What if it was heat exhaustion? He pulled open the drawer again, rifling through the boxes and bottles, scanning the labels with a frantic intensity. His breathing quickened, and then his gaze froze on a small blue box, one she recognized all too well. It had been there for years, ever since her husband had passed. A memory, a foolish sentimentality. She watched as his expression shifted. The flush drained from his face, leaving a ghostly pallor. His lips parted in silent shock. He slowly picked up the box, as if afraid it would burn him. He turned it over in his hands, read the label again, and she saw genuine terror reflected in his eyes. This isn't mine," he whispered, looking from the box to her. He stumbled backward, colliding with the couch and collapsing onto it. The box slipped from his fingers and fell to the carpet. She approached, picked it up, and looked at Mark. He sat there, cradling his head in his hands, rocking back and forth. "Mark, what happened? What are those pills?" Her voice came out surprisingly calm. She already understood. She perched on the edge of the couch, careful to keep a respectful distance but close enough to offer comfort. The deliberate distance between them felt inappropriate now. "These are my dad's," she said softly, placing the small blue box on the coffee table. "He took them when he felt his heart acting up. Said they really helped him regulate his blood pressure." Each word was a mix of truth and deception. Her late husband had indeed taken those pills, but not for his heart. They were meant to enhance his vitality. Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. "Elena, I took one. I thought it was my joint medication." She tried to mask her surprise with a look of mild concern. "It's not a big deal. It's just medication. Maybe the dosage is a bit strong for you. My dad was a big guy, he needed something potent." She watched him swallow hard, understanding the implications of what he had just done. "What do I do now?" His whisper was laced with desperation. "What can you do? Just lie down and rest. The effect will wear off eventually." She paused, glancing out the window. Her father had always said those pills were effective, fast-acting, and long-lasting. He used to say that after taking them, he felt like he could conquer mountains. The energy just surged through him. The key was to channel that energy properly, so he wouldn't end up in trouble. She stood up, trying to keep the mood light. "You just relax. I'll handle dinner. Maybe by evening, it'll pass. And if it doesn't, well, we'll figure something out. Can't let all that energy go to waste, right?" She offered him the most encouraging smile she could muster. But in his eyes, she saw not relief but growing panic. He remained seated on the couch, rigid and staring blankly ahead. The house fell into a heavy silence, charged with unspoken words and the inevitable consequences of his small mistake. She walked to the kitchen, feeling her own heart begin to race. Tonight promised to be very, very interesting. As she stirred the buckwheat in the pot, its soothing aroma filled the kitchen. But tranquility was elusive. The silence in the living room was so profound it rang in her ears. It was the kind of silence that didn't come from an empty house but from someone who was there, frozen like a deer in headlights. She knew Mark was sitting there, grappling with the effects of the chemical he had introduced into his body, battling against a body that suddenly felt foreign. "Mark," she called, trying to keep her voice casual. "Could you please grab me a jar of mushrooms from the basement? The key is hanging on the nail by the door." No response came, just a silence that thickened the air. "Mark, can you hear me?" she repeated, raising her voice slightly as she turned off the stove. The quiet persisted. Her heart skipped a beat. Had he become seriously unwell? She wiped her hands on her apron and walked into the living room. He was still sitting on the couch, in the same position, tense and straight as a rod. But now, his gaze was fixed on her. She paused in the doorway, feeling the weight of his stare. "Mark?" she asked gently, stepping closer. The tension in the room was palpable, a mix of anxiety and unspoken fears. She could see the battle within him, the struggle against the effects of the pills he had mistakenly taken. "Do you want to talk about it?" she offered, her voice softening. She took a seat on the edge of the coffee table, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough to show her support. "I don't know what to do, Elena," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just breathe," she encouraged, her heart aching for him. "Focus on your breathing. It'll be okay." He nodded slowly, but the panic in his eyes remained. The silence stretched between them, heavy with uncertainty. She could feel her own heart racing, mirroring his anxiety. "Let's just take it one step at a time," she said, trying to keep the atmosphere light despite the gravity of the situation. "You're not alone in this." Mark took a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thanks, Elena. I appreciate it." She smiled softly, hoping to ease his tension. "Just remember, it's going to be all right. We'll get through this together." As she stood to return to the kitchen, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could navigate this unexpected evening together, finding solace in each other's company amidst the chaos. The sun was setting over the small town of Maplewood, casting a warm golden hue through the kitchen window. Elena stood at the sink, washing the last of the dishes from dinner. The aroma of roasted chicken still lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of fresh herbs from the garden. She wiped her hands on her apron and glanced into the living room, where Mark sat on the couch, his posture rigid and his expression troubled. "Mark," she called gently, stepping into the room. The tension was palpable, a heavy silence hanging between them. His eyes met hers, filled with a mix of anxiety and something deeper, something unspoken. "Do you want to talk about it?" she offered, her voice soothing. She perched on the edge of the coffee table, careful to maintain a respectful distance while still showing her support. "I don't know what to do, Elena," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. He nodded slowly, but the panic in his eyes remained. The silence stretched, thick with uncertainty. Elena could feel her own heart racing, mirroring his anxiety. "Let's just take it one step at a time," she said, trying to lighten the mood despite the gravity of the situation. "You're not alone in this." Elena returned to the kitchen, but her mind was still on Mark. She could hear him shifting on the couch, the sound of fabric against fabric as he tried to find comfort. She poured herself a glass of water, the coolness refreshing against her warm skin. The evening felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and emotions that hung in the air like a thick fog. After a moment, she decided to check on him again. She walked back into the living room, her heart pounding slightly as she approached. Mark was still sitting there, but now he looked more vulnerable, his eyes searching for something, perhaps reassurance, perhaps understanding. "Hey," she said softly, sitting back down on the coffee table. "Do you want to talk about what's bothering you?" He hesitated, his gaze drifting to the floor. "It's just, everything feels overwhelming right now. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." Elena leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees. "It's okay to feel that way. Life can throw us curveballs we're not prepared for. But you don't have to face it alone." Mark finally looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. "I don't want to burden you with my problems." "You're not a burden," she replied firmly. "We're friends, and friends help each other. Just let it out." He took a deep breath, and for a moment, she could see the struggle within him. "I've been feeling lost, like I'm stuck in a rut. And then tonight, I took those pills by mistake, thinking they would help me relax, but they just made everything worse." Elena's heart sank. "I'm glad you're okay. But you need to be careful with that stuff. It can mess with your head." "I know," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I just wanted to escape for a moment." "Sometimes, facing our problems head-on is the only way to truly escape them," she said gently. "You have to confront what's bothering you, not run away from it." Mark nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "You're right. I just don't know how." Elena felt a surge of determination. "Let's figure it out together. You don't have to do this alone." As the conversation flowed, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The tension began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. Elena could see the walls Mark had built around himself starting to crumble, revealing the man beneath, the one who had always been there, but was now lost in his own turmoil. "Sometimes, it helps to talk about it," she suggested, her voice softening. "What's been weighing on your mind?" Mark hesitated, his gaze drifting to the window where the last rays of sunlight were fading. "I guess I've been feeling like I'm not enough. Not for my job, not for my family. It's like I'm constantly trying to prove myself, and I'm just tired." Elena's heart ached for him. "You are enough, Mark. You've accomplished so much. You're a good person, and you care about those around you. That counts for a lot." He looked at her, his expression softening. "Thank you, Elena. It means a lot to hear that." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "We all need a little reminder sometimes. It's okay to lean on others." Mark's gaze lingered on her, and for a moment, the air between them crackled with an unspoken connection. Elena felt her cheeks flush slightly as she held his gaze, a mix of vulnerability and strength passing between them. "Maybe I just need to let go," he said quietly, breaking the moment. "Let go of the pressure I put on myself." "Exactly," she replied, her voice steady. "You don't have to carry that weight alone." Mark took a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing further. "I think I'm starting to understand that." As the evening wore on, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, laughter replacing the earlier tension. They reminisced about old family gatherings, shared stories of their childhoods, and even joked about the mishaps in the garden. The connection between them deepened, and Elena found herself feeling more at ease than she had in a long time. But as the laughter faded, the weight of the earlier conversation lingered in the back of her mind. She could still see the flicker of vulnerability in Mark's eyes, and she knew that while they had made progress, there was still more to address. "Mark," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "I want you to know that I'm here for you. If you ever need to talk or just hang out, don't hesitate to reach out." He nodded, gratitude evident in his expression. "I appreciate that, Elena. Really. It's nice to know I have someone I can count on." she smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. Always. As the night drew to a close, Mark stood up, stretching his arms above his head. I should probably get going. Thanks for everything tonight. Elena walked him to the door, her heart racing slightly as they stood close together. Take care of yourself, okay? I will, he promised, his eyes locking onto hers. And thank you for being you. In that moment, something shifted between them. The air was charged with an unspoken understanding, a connection that transcended their previous roles. Elena felt seen in a way she hadn't before, and it left her breathless. Good night, Mark, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Good night, Elena, he replied, his gaze lingering before he stepped out into the cool night air. As she closed the door behind him, Elena leaned against it, her heart racing. She felt a sense of hope blossoming within her, a feeling that perhaps they could navigate this journey together, one step at a time. Days turned into weeks, and while life resumed its usual rhythm, the dynamic between Elena and Mark had subtly shifted. Their conversations became deeper, filled with shared laughter and moments of vulnerability. Each time he visited, she noticed the way his gaze lingered on her, a warmth that hinted at something more. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mark turned to her, his expression serious. Elena, I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night. About letting go and being honest with myself. She nodded, her heart racing. And? I think I'm ready to take that step, he said, his voice steady. Not just for myself, but for us. Elena's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? I mean, I want to explore what's between us, he confessed, his eyes searching hers. I don't want to hide anymore. Her heart soared at his words, a rush of warmth flooding her. I'd like that too, Mark. He smiled, a genuine warmth lighting up his face. Then let's see where this goes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow around them, Elena felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had both faced their fears and vulnerabilities, and now they stood on the brink of something beautiful. Together? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Together, he affirmed, reaching for her hand. In that moment, everything felt right. They were no longer just friends navigating their struggles, they were two souls ready to embrace the journey ahead, hand in hand. Subscribe to the channel,